Hello, and we are live for a very special. Alberta is getting an independence referendum live stream. The committee, which is the Citizen Initiative Proposal Review, it's a special committee that was brought together for the purpose of reviewing Thomas Lukaszik's Forever Canada petition. Is happening today after some drama at yesterday's committee meeting, which I didn't watch, though read a very good report by Matthew Scase and Carrie Tate at the Globe and Mail today. So I guess just to get everyone up to speed about where we're at now before the committee starts, and I have to shut up for a bit, is back when the Alberta government brought forward Bill 54, which lowered the threshold for a referendum, which was clearly designed to give the separatists a leg up. Former Deputy Premier Thomas Lukaszik had a petition drive of his own using the old rules, which required him to get more petition signatures and gave him a bit of a head start on the separatists. That was especially the case when the chief electoral officer, Gordon McClure, took the original separatist petition to the Court of King's Bench because this is an initiative act which was brought into law by Jason Kenney in 2021, forbids constitutional referendums on things that are unconstitutional. And so McClure wanted to do some due diligence, sent it to the Court of King's Bench to determine whether he can approve the petition. So while this is going on in court, and many First Nations and First Nations organizations like the Confederacy of Treaty 6 First Nations, Treaty 8 First Nations of Alberta, joined as interveners in court. So while this was going on, Lukaszik is collecting signatures for the Forever Canada petition. And at this time, and because Lukaszik's been a bit slippery about this lately, at the time, Lukaszik was quite clear that there's going to be a referendum on Alberta independence. We want to nip that in the bud and have an affirmative question that asks, do you want to remain in Canada? But it was proposed as a policy referendum rather than a constitutional referendum, which gives the legislature the opportunity to discuss it and debate it before sending it to referendum. So it collected more than enough signatures. It got almost 500,000. Right. They were collecting signatures everywhere. It was actually quite impressive in my view, organizing on their part. It's kind of just sat in abeyance while the independence referendum went through court. And so there were hearings in front of Justice Colin Feasby, who in December rules the day after the UCP introduced Bill 14, which removes the Citizen Initiative Act's constitutional safeguard that prohibits referendum questions that are unconstitutional. They remove that, and then Feasby issues an expedited ruling the day after legislation is introduced, but hasn't passed yet, saying that, yes, this is unconstitutional by definition because Alberta becoming an independent state by necessity would wipe out constitutional protections for Aboriginal peoples and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. That's not to say that those rights wouldn't necessarily exist in an independent Alberta, but there's no guarantee of that. So, in that sense, it's inherently unconstitutional. And Feasby in his rulings, adds an addendum, really tearing the government apart for trying to get ahead of the referendum. Or sorry, get ahead of his ruling and sort of preempt it by allowing a constitutional referendum whose result would be unconstitutional. So the separatists reapplied, this time as a group called Stay Free Alberta, as opposed to the Alberta Prosperity Project. It's not immediately apparent to me why they created a new organization, but I suspect when it comes referendum time, it has something to do with advertising. Anyways, they go out, they're finally allowed to collect signatures. The chief electoral officer approves their new petition, which is important to note. And they ask, instead of the original question was asking about Alberta becoming sovereign, no longer being part of Canada and becoming sovereign. This one clarifies the language and says become an independent state, right? So that's a big difference, but substantively they're the same question. So a bunch of First Nations take it to court. Sturgeon Lake Cree Nation, Athabasca Chippewa First Nation, and the Blackfoot Kings Confederacy, which consists of the Blood Tribe, Siksika Nation, and Piikani Nation in southern Alberta. And so in April, at the beginning of April, a different Court of King's Bench justice, Shayna Leonard, hears these First Nations objections to the approval of this petition. And they sort of take two different tracks. So Sturgeon Lake Cree Nation, which is up in Treaty 8, argues that you can't, I think straightforwardly argues that the Alberta government didn't like the ruling that Justice Feasby was about to release. So they put forward legislation that made it moot. And that, explicitly says in Bill 14 that all, court challenges on the constitutionality of referendum petitions are nixed. Not the exact words, but that was the substance of it. There was only one in process, so it was quite clear what they were referring to. And so Sturgeon Lake and their lawyer, Orlaw O'Kelly, argued that there should be an injunction against that part of Bill 14 that takes out these constitutional protections. Athabasca Chippewa First Nation and the Blackfoot Confederacy argued that actually it was the chief electoral officer who erred, that the legislation didn't require him to retroactively approve a petition that was substantially the same as the one he was forced to reject in court. So Justice Leonard ruled last week that the Sturgeon Lake application, which talks about, when you're trying to get an injunction, you have to demonstrate that not doing so will cause irreparable harm. What's irreparable harm? That's essentially harm that monetary compensation can't solve. So they talk about this increase in racism against First Nations. They talk about the risk of foreign interference. They talk about the damage to treaty relationships and the spread of misinformation about treaty relationships. And Justice Leonard says that Sturgeon Lake didn't adequately demonstrate that these harms were a result of the approval of the separatist petition. So she declined their request for an injunction against the legislation. However, she did rule in favor of Athabasca Chippewan and the Blackfoot Confederacy in arguing that the Crown, which Gordon McClure, as chief electoral officer, is an agent for when he approves petitions, needed to engage in consultation with Treaty First Nations before approving a independence referendum petition, right? So that needs to happen before. And now this contradicts the Quebec secession reference that the Supreme Court of Canada made in 1998, where they talk about how First Nations and the federal government and other provinces need to be in negotiations with a province that wants to separate once there is a clear majority in favor of a clear question in support of secession. So there are people, lawyers, who suggest that this ruling is quite appealable. Now, immediately after, Stay Free Alberta and its lawyer Jeffrey Rath and the Alberta government said, we are going to appeal this in court. This is, unelected, Trudeau-appointed judge who is subverting the will of, the separatists claim they got 300,000 signatures. Now, did they? I'm sure they did get more than the 178,000 or so that are required, but did they get 300,000? I don't know. They haven't been counted yet, because while Justice Leonard was deciding whether to cancel the referendum petition process, she ordered a stay on counting the signatures. So there's that track. So the Alberta government supports, taking this to court, which is a way for Smith to appeal to the separatists without saying she's separatist, without actually being committed ideologically to their project. Although lots of elements of their project, if you read their platform, The Value of Freedom, do dovetail with what Smith is advocating now, and also what she's advocated in her career as a columnist. For instance, getting rid of income taxes and replacing them with a sales tax. That was something she floated, in like 2004 as a Calgary Herald columnist, which was used against her in the UCP leadership race, removing the context that she was calling to get rid of income taxes, right? The anti-immigrant stuff is very much what the separatists are calling for. And then the constitutional questions that we have no control over that we're voting on in October are also things that separatists would like having control over our own judicial appointments, right? Requiring ID to vote, these types of things, right? So, but there's another avenue for bringing forward an independence referendum, and one that would actually allow Smith to put some more distance between herself in the separatists, at least optically, and that is Luke Hazek's petition, which has suddenly now been revived, and the UCP are very interested in it. And so yesterday, the committee met. It was supposed to just meet yesterday and vote on whether to proceed with the Forever Canada petition on October's referendum. Now, what happened is quite funny. Now, this is a 6-person committee, 4 UCP members, 2 New Democrats. So, I mean, whatever the UCP members want to do is what's going to happen, right? But procedurally, they screwed up because the UCP caucus put out a news release while the committee was still in session saying that, yeah, the committees voted to approve the Forever Canada petition as a referendum question in October. So we'll be asking, instead of, do you want Alberta to separate from Canada and become an independent country? We're going to be asking the opposite, right? Which does actually put opponents of separatism in a bind, because they'll be urging everyone to vote again, no to everything but the Forever Canada question, which is a yes, right? If there's a separatist question, you could just say no to everything. Though I like the idea of abolishing the Senate, and I'll probably vote for that. But I don't begrudge anyone who just wants to say no to all of the things Smith is proposing, and yes to Forever Canada. What happened was basically the committee was adjourned, figure out what to do, considering UCP caucus put out a statement that was patently untrue. Committee hadn't voted in favor of anything and were in the process of deliberating it. Again, it's funny because they're going to do it anyways. So, it doesn't really matter. But when you're in a legislative committee, there is a procedure to follow, and they didn't, which is consistent with the UCP just steamrolling all of these democratic norms and checks on their power, even if in this case, and in many cases, they're mostly optical. Right? So here we are. This is the meeting where they're going to talk about Lukaszyk's petition and putting it on the ballot. I know Lukaczyk was called to testify yesterday, where he claimed, look, if you want to put this on the ballot, not my problem. That's your problem, which I think is a bit disingenuous. Again, the wording of the petition, you can find it on Elections Alberta's website, is quite clear. We're proposing a referendum on the question of, should Alberta remain in Canada, right? So yeah, I know more recently Lukaszyk's been saying no. He just wanted it to be debated in the legislature to expose divisions within the UCP. I find that implausible, because Lukaczyk is a smart guy, very familiar with how the legislature works, and he knows that the UCP would never allow that, right? They would never allow, the urban members of the Calgary members of their caucus to, because they have no Edmonton members, to argue in favor of Canada, and the rural members to argue in support of independence, or at least having the referendum on independence, which is sort of the line that they've been trying to thread, right? It was Jason Steffen, because he's a fantastic idiot, who, wrote that Western Standard op-ed saying, yeah, you should sign the petition and you should vote yes, though now he'll be urging them to vote no, to put pressure on Canada, right? Which is the position of Maxime Bernier. That's what he's saying too. And it was interesting. I went to the Separatist Canada Day last year outside the Whistle Stop Cafe in Mirror, which is owned by former CEO of the Alberta Prosperity Project, Chris Scott, who's also, more famous as a serial COVID public health order violator. And Bernier was there. He gave a speech, as did Christine Anderson, who's this really awful far-right German European member of parliament, who I'm told by sources in Germany is a nobody there, but the convoy crowd lover here. And Bernier went up there and said, yeah, I'm a Quebecer, and I'm telling you, you need to vote to separate so that you can get a better deal out of Canada. Use the example of the 1993 Quebec referendum, which, all what lost by razor thin margin, and Bernier said we didn't get anything out of it, which I mean is a crock of shit. Quebec, you know, I mean, Quebec, has a lot of powers delegated to it that other provinces don't. Though that was the case before the referendum. So, but certainly, liberal politicians do tread lightly on Quebec issues and talking about policies that they would oppose anywhere else in the country, because Quebec is unique, right? I mean, and that is, I mean, Quebec separatism is qualitatively distinct from Alberta separatism, right? Quebec, there is, I mean, anyone who's been to Quebec can tell you it's not like the rest of Canada. It's not. I mean, they speak a different language there, you know? The political culture there is a lot more friendly to labor interests. You know, I mean, lots of very deep rooted cultural differences. In Alberta, I mean, it fundamentally comes back to oil and gas, right? And wanting to just drill, baby, drill, right? Yves Francois Blanchet, was asked, he really cooked us. He was asked, if he has any advice to to Alberta's separatist movement as a, Quebec separatist. And he was like, you need to work on your culture because oil and gas isn't a culture, which, I think is correct. That was a good point he made. Now, of course, when we're talking about these cultural grievances that are also fueling Alberta separatism, a lot of them came out of the convoy, anti-immigrant sentiment as well, all sorts of conspiracy theories. I mean, there is like a clear cultural component, but I don't think having your brain fried by, social media algorithms is a culture either, any more than oil and gas is. So, um, I mean, we do have a distinct political culture. I think that is undeniable. That is very influenced by American Republicans, smaller Republicans who settled here, in the Mormons and southern Alberta. But it's one that, I mean, you can make the same case of Saskatchewan in BC as well. Manitoba also. Jared Wesley has a great book from 15 years ago called Code Politics that looks at campaign literature across the three prairie provinces and distills these sort of codes that politicians speak in across the political spectrum in each province. That sort of speaks to their distinct political culture. So Alberta's is very populist and individualist and, sort of autonomist, if you will, about protecting the Alberta public from this external threat. Saskatchewan is a lot more collectivist, right? Like even right wing politicians in Saskatchewan, given its CCF roots, talk about this sort of common good, which I would argue is the same in Alberta. Right, and that comes out of the populism, right? That we are the people that are being held down by these elites. And then Manitoba is like this like mushy middle between the sort of Albertan rugged individualism and this sort of collectivism in Saskatchewan, right? So I don't know. There is this interesting divide, I think, among separatists between people who want like Wexit, which is, Western Canada, which I mean, mainly Alberta and Saskatchewan. Manitoba isn't really that interested in separating. though I don't know how many people in Saskatchewan actually want to separate, but also there aren't a lot of people in Saskatchewan, so they would just become a vassal of Alberta if we create our own, Western Canadian Republic. And then BC, which, I mean, culturally, the BC interior is not that different from Alberta. But certainly, I think the lower mainland and the island would not want any part of that. And then you've got, yeah, Manitoba. So it's like unclear, but there are separatists who do want to become part of the United States. I think that's also an important part of this discussion. And I think there's this tendency um, among a lot of liberals to portray the separatist movement and also like just any right wing politics in Canada as just uh, um, American interference, as this, astroturf US plot to um, brainwash Canadians. And I mean, there's certainly truth to that, but I don't think the Americans are as interested in us as our populist right wingers are in them, right? And ingratiating themselves to them, which you see with Smith, right? You also see that with Rath and Mitch Sylvester and Dennis Modry going states and meeting with the State Department. Um, you know, I mean, I think the US does want um to control Canada as part of its sphere of influence, if you will. But the US already does control Canada for the most part, right? I don't know. Um are there elements of the MAGA movement that support Alberta independence as a means of destabilizing Canada and sort of increasing US dominance over it? Yeah, for sure. I mean, Tucker Carlson, I think, has spoken fondly. Of course, David Parker went on tour with him, which is how he learned about a company called 10X Votes. So Hoekstra, yeah, I mean, again, Hoekstra is involved with like 10X Votes. Luke LeBrun had a really great story at Press Progress talking about the sort of American ties of the project. Um, and I realized I didn't have the volume on. But to the extent that Hoekstra is like orchestrating this, which I'm not saying you're suggesting Bob's the uncle, I'm just saying some people would. I think that's highly unlikely. Can you guys hear the music? Like, I'm wondering if you guys will be able to hear the sound on the screen I'm sharing. Can someone tell me if they're hearing this elevator music that's playing? You can't hear the music. Shit. Okay. Well, the music stopped. Okay, so I do have captions on for when it starts, so you'll be able to see what they're saying. I guess if you wanna hear it, you might have to pull it up in your own browser. Um, hmm. So I didn't, what do now? Can you hear music now? Screen sharing is, video only. Uh, Substacking is Substack is, working on it. Um, so, I mean, you're not missing much in terms of this elevator music. Um, but and yeah, I have the captions on. Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, you can throw it open in, you know, another, window if you wanna hear what people are saying and not just read the captions. Um, I mean, totally up to you. Um, yeah, I think it will still be fun to watch this, or you could just close your eyes and just listen to my commentary on, what I'm hearing, but you're not. I guess while we wait, does anyone have questions for me? Any questions? Could do a little mailbag segment before the committee starts. How much longer till she's gone? I think, in Futurama, how the president is Richard Nixon's head, in a vat. I think that may be the case here. Um, I know Jeffrey Rath is talking about organizing against Smith, trying to, get a leadership review. Um, but I think you have to distinguish between, like, the big egos in the separatist movement, the David Parkers, the Jeffrey Raths, and the rank and file separatists, who, I think are quite happy with Smith, certainly the ones I've spoken to. Um, um, yeah, um, they like her. They see that they're moving the ball in her direction, so because who are they gonna replace her with? Who is more who is a better salesperson for their interest than Danielle Smith, right? There isn't one. So I think history has shown, um, conservative leaders in Alberta don't get turfed by the electorate, except for Jim Prentice, who did. They get turfed by their own, party, right? Or caucus or, external matters, but, I mean, they don't care what we think of her. In fact, not I shouldn't say they don't care what we think of her. They do care what we think of her in that they revel in our hatred for her. They enjoy it, right? So, yeah, I don't, I think Smith is gonna be premier for a while. I think, you know, in the next year or so, she's gonna do the tax cuts that she promised in the last election. Um, yeah, I think most separatists are quite happy with her. Um, at least the ones I've spoken to, and let's not forget Mitch Sylvester is, constituency association president for the UCP, right? Like, I don't think I think it's an oversimplification to suggest the UCP is a separatist party. Um, but, there are certainly, oh, it started already. Why can't they answer the question? No, but whew, this is getting testy. He's such a ghoul. I think Jason Nixon, like him being finance minister, is a nightmare. I mean, he's a partisan, really. Yeah, I'm normally not a fan of this procedural stuff, but I think in this context it makes sense because your average member of the public, I mean, mind you, your average member of the public isn't watching this, but um it makes sense to hammer home what happened yesterday and demand an explanation because people might wonder why they sent out a news release saying a vote occurred that didn't occur. Remember when Jeremy Farkas did that uh, when he was a Calgary city councillor? Um, though in that case, it wasn't while something was being debated that was going to get voted on. That was a case where he couldn't find a seconder for his motion. And I actually don't think what he did was that bad. And I like that he refused to apologize because I think people on the left should do that too. Because no one cares about this procedural stuff, right? Unless there's something substantive attached to it, like sending out this news release saying something's going to happen before it gets voted on. At the same time, though, you know, they probably should move on soon to substantive. Well, Bob, I'm trying to broadcast it, but Substack's technology isn't there yet. Racky, it's 4-2. You know that he's not going to do that. Do you guys think Lunty's a tweaker? I'm just asking a question. I don't have an opinion either way, but he does seem uh, often jittery. Ketamine? No, 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 not ketamine. Ketamine doesn't make you jittery. Don't ask me how I know that. I've forgotten how to share the link. All right, that's interesting. I, of course, have no comment, just asking questions. No, no, sorry, David, I meant the link to this stream so I could share it on social media. Um, Thank you, David. I keep thinking he's referring to someone named Emily when he says MLA. Just me. No, Duncan. Substack doesn't have the capability yet to uh, share sound. So yeah, I got the captions. Ooh, a history lesson. Yes, that's correct, Duncan. I believe Smith has a uh, address to the province as she loves to do this evening. Forget what time, but it's already recorded. And I mean, I was talking about this earlier. I mean, this is procedural fetishism to some extent. I mean, the committee's majority UCP, so it's going to vote to do whatever the UCP members want. Um, but you know, probably should wait until there's a vote to send out news release on it. I wonder if they're just doing it to fuck with people. 6:45. That's right, Jeff. Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna move past procedural semantics at some point. And you can read it if you want. The recording of this is gonna um you know, not be ideal, unless the recording captures the sound on my end, because I can hear it. I mean, that's true, but, like, uh, you know, Luke Hasek should have probably thought about that. His policy proposal to have a referendum on staying in Canada, but, you know. Oh, of course, it's already recorded. He doesn't care about separatism. He's just loyal. It's like Mickey Amory or Demetrios Nicolaides. I'd say Nixon's more ideological than them, but I don't think he's a separatist. He's just, loves, making poor people's lives difficult. So he gets his kicks. I mean, isn't that kind of a fair point? Uh, yeah, Duncan, well, actually, no, I was gonna say Western Standard had that piece, trying to find out if Mickey Amory or sorry, not Mickey Amory, Sam Maraish has Hezbollah ties, and they're like, "Yeah, we couldn't find anything, but, we're gonna mention them anyways." But no, no one has. That's a good question. I know people who know Amory and his family. I should ask them if they know anything. I wonder if this is gonna wind up in court. Jason Nixon, the voice of Forever Canada. It's so shameless. It did call for a referendum, like, let's not forget that. Like Kazakh's got some questions to answer, let's put it that way. Mm. Do they have to consult if the question is asking for the status quo?
Honestly, I don't even think this is opinion. This is kind of
Ooh. I mean, they are stalling. Not saying they shouldn't, but No audio, Neil. Substack doesn't have that technology yet. I have audio, but, you can't hear it. So which is why I have, the, captions on. However, if you open it up, um, in your browser and, make sure it's live, you can sync it, like Dark Side of the Moon and Wizard of Oz, but more boring. Well, because the Minister of Indigenous Relations hasn't, been told what to say. Uh-oh. Ooh, we got breaking news. Zoom in. Oh, yeah, like yesterday. Yeah, that's a good question, Jeff, and I've been wondering that too. Um, I I wonder if Smith is gonna address that tonight and try and spin it as, we don't need to consult because, 400,000, Albertans signed this petition. Um, but yeah, how does she avoid it not just winding up in court again is my question. And, I mean, I don't know the law any more than, any other, non-lawyer who observes these things closely. Um, but it would seem to me that it will end up in court. And then that's just further grist for the separatist mill. Smith can be like, hey, I tried. I put up all the roadblocks, but it's these damn liberal appointed judges. And then she can string the separatists along to the next election and have the October referendums on things that are separatist adjacent, but not explicitly separatist. She's all right. She'd be a better leader than Nenshi. I like her personally. Um, but I mean, she comes from, employer side labor law, right? So she's not a social democrat, which, for what it's worth. Just just plowing through. Come on. I mean, she probably does have disdain for Lunty as chair, as she well should. Yeah, I know. It's what can you say? But also fuck the process. But the NDP can't say that because they spent the first half hour at least talking about the process, that was violated yesterday. I mean, this is for show, right? That's the thing. That's about this new authoritarianism that the UCP embodies so well is, um, you know, democracy is just spectacle. Decisions are being made beforehand, and if you don't like it, tough. Yeah, yeah, and both sides do it, but one side is trolling when they do it, right? Yeah, I mean, in fairness, the process sucks. You should have disdain for the process. Nixon is just such a goon. Actually, in the Kenny book, I described Jason Nixon as, a goon, and my editor, insisted on taking it out, which, I mean, I see his point. Awesome. I wonder that probably wasn't an MLA. Though I guess anyone could walk in and watch a committee. Mm. Hmm. Pretty much in. All right. So I guess where we're at now is the committee's going to write a report um, to for the legislature to they're going to argue they should call a referendum on the Forever Canada petition, and the New Democrats are going to write their minority report that's going to be ignored, which is interesting because Smith, of course, has her announcement tonight. Um, and it's unclear what exactly she's going to say. I would imagine this is the plan all along, and she's going to communicate tonight how, um, you know, that they're doing their due diligence by requesting a report from the committee before they make a decision to, I guess, soften people up for it. But at the same time, I mean, the government has committed to challenging Justice Leonard's decision in court with the separatists. And I think what we have to understand is that this for the separatist movement, it's more about the process than the outcome. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, sure. Like the most committed separatists want Alberta to be an independent country, but in the meantime, you know, you've got to build the institutions and create the atmosphere within which that's possible. So having people constantly talk about the prospect of separating is certainly one of them that the media, including myself, is willing to oblige. Placing these restrictions on immigration, complaining about how the federal government won't just give us money and requires it to spend it on their like social programs that we can't appoint our own judges, right? And so I think that's important for understanding what's going on here, right? It's a long game. It's a long game. I mean, would they like to have their referendum in October? For sure. Will they have it in October? Maybe. I don't know. Like again, I'd be interested in talking to someone who's an expert in the constitutional law about whether because this proposal is asking people essentially to approve the status quo, whether there is that duty to consult, um, because its outcome is doesn't impact treaty rights. We vote to remain in Canada, then the treaties are all intact. The um, Charter of Rights and Freedoms is intact, right? So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure how much I learned from watching this committee meeting today. I don't know about you guys. I'm getting really hungry, so I'm probably gonna end this shortly. But does anyone have any questions I could answer before that? All right, not seeing any. Thanks for joining me today. Hopefully, it wasn't too annoying not having the sound on my stream. Hopefully, Substack figures that out soon. Yeah, we can keep doing this. It would be better if you guys could hear it without having to open another window. I mean, it kind of defeats the purpose of it. But yeah, I think specific debates in the legislative assembly and committees that are noteworthy, because a lot of it's really boring, right? It's like dry and procedural, and I'm not a legislative reporter. I don't get paid enough to sit through all these, but yeah, I'm going to motion to adjourn, and I'm the only person who gets to vote. So, thanks so much for joining me. Hope you enjoyed this. And one last thing, if you like the fact that I did this, or you appreciate other work that I've done, and you have some extra money lying around, you want to become a paid subscriber to the Orchard, you know, I'm not going to stop you, you know. In fact, I might lightly encourage you to do so. That was great. Um, Anyways, signing off now. Good night and good luck.